Hi, I'm Rick Dior. Today we're going to talk about performance anxiety. It's a video I've wanted to do for a long time. I get a lot of questions, comments, emails, and I talk to my students about it quite often. So this is a problem for everybody, not just musicians or artists, but the general public. I think it's estimated that up to 73 or 74% of people experience this in their lifetimes. And what it is, it's not a disorder or anything like that. It's just a fear of performing. In other words, it could be public speaking, it could be a sports event, it could be performing. So this is something that most all musicians and performers are going to have to deal with at some time in their lives. And I've been playing professionally now for, over 40 years, and I've certainly experienced this issue. I don't really call it a problem. I call it an issue because it's a normal reaction, like fight or flight. And you're not going to fight, so you want to run away and you don't want to be there because when the pressure's on, it can get to you in physical and mental ways. So today I'm going to show you some ways to cope with it, show you how I cope with it, and also what I've learned from performing with a lot of well-known artists. And I've talked to some of them about it. And actually, I've been backstage, being a percussionist in an orchestra, you're backstage a lot of times when the soloist is about to go on. So in other words, you'll play an overture or the first piece of the concert, and then the artist will be waiting backstage to go on, and you go backstage because you might not be on the concerto. And I've seen over the years, maybe 100 different artists getting ready to go on, pianists and violinists and violists and all, even percussionists, Evan Glennie and a few others that I've performed with. And they're all nervous and they all deal with it in a different way. I've seen performers pace back and forth. I've seen them actually throw up. That's very rare, but a few. So lots of different things happen. But they all deal with it and they all go on and they all play well for the most part. So these are things that can end careers for a rare few, but most of us learn how to get on with it. And when I was in college, we actually had a class that dealt with this since it was such a problem for a lot of people. So if you're a drummer, the worst thing that can happen is your hands can start to shake. And if that happens and you're playing Ravel's Bolero, which I was just playing when we opened up the video there, you're in trouble. And I've had to play that piece several times. And the first time I played it, I was right next to the conductor. I was very young. I was probably 21 or 22. And it's tradition sometimes for the snare drum to be right downstage with the conductor. And I was terrified. This conductor was not a nice person. So I did everything I could to practice it. I would practice this thing all day for hours and hours and hours, as soft as I possibly could. I tried all different kinds of sticks. I spoke to my teacher, Fred Hinger, about it. He had different things they did. In those days, they used coins to play it, which is kind of crazy because you got to switch to sticks. He even showed me a way where they would choke up on the stick like this. And then move back like this incrementally for the 15 minutes that that piece lasts. I never used that, but I did practice it just in case. But I was able to get through it, just trying to breathe and calm my nerves. Now, there are medications that you can take. I cannot take them. They're called beta blockers. I have pretty bad asthma from a child when I was a child, and I still have it. So I tried a beta blocker once. Someone gave me one before performance at the college when I was a kid at Manhattan School of Music. I ended up later that night in the hospital because I didn't realize that it suppresses your adrenal gland, and I was having a really hard time breathing. I didn't know what was going on, but then they explained it to me that I would not be able to take those. So, but lots and lots of musicians take them. I guess they're safe. I know plenty of people who do. There's nothing wrong with it. If it helps you in auditions, by all means, you can go to your doctor and ask them about it. But I can't take them personally because of that health issue. So the way I cope is multifold. So I have different ways of doing this, and that's what we're going to talk about. Uh, the first thing as a percussionist, because that's what we're talking about today, is to steady your hands and to breathe. So I have this little piece of moleskin here that you see, and what I do sometimes if I play something really soft, I'll rest my sticks on there like that, and then I'll go to the drum. So I'll hop from here to the drum. That lets me relax my hands. So I'll do this, and then I'll breathe. And this is what I used to do during auditions when I was taking orchestra auditions. And then I would bring the sticks down and so that was one way that I dealt with it. And I think lots of people are doing that now. But back in the day, there weren't a lot doing it, and that's one thing you can do to steady your hands. The other thing is to breathe. Don't hold your breath. That's one thing you want to do when you're super nervous. And I used to get really nervous in college for my juries because I was on a big scholarship and I wouldn't have been able to afford to go there if I lost it. So every jury was just like basically a PTSD experience for me. But by my last jury, I was good. It just took that long to do it. And my first one was in front of Fred Henger, Paul Price, Walter Rosenberger. So three giants of the percussion world. And they couldn't have been nicer to me, but I was terrified. So those exposures to that kind of thing early on really, really helped me with this. And that's the other thing I want to mention is as you have more experiences performing and under pressure and pressure situations where you're nervous and you get through that performance every time, usually it gets a little better. And that's the way it was for me. So I went from almost not functioning where my legs would shake and, I was just ready to pass out, really, shortness of breath when I was my first year in college, to being very, very relaxed. And by the time I did my senior recital, after many, many performances, I was just having a good old time. And then I was able to transition to auditions and everything like that and be fine. Now, I'm never going to say that I don't get nervous when I play, because I do. I still do sometimes. It's weird because you'll be completely calm and feel great, and then all of a sudden the concert starts and you just get nervous. And the worst thing for percussionists is we're sitting down, and this is in an orchestra, by the way. We'll talk about drum set in a minute. But you'll be sitting down for maybe 20 minutes before you have to get up and play. And then when you stand up, it's kind of a shock. I mean, your blood pressure is even going to change when you stand up. And then you got to just stand up and play your little thing, whatever it is, a xylophone or even a cymbal crash, which is easier, but maybe something really delicate on the snare drum. And all eyes are on you. So everything you play as a percussionist in an orchestra is a solo. It's not like you're a violinist where you can hide amongst the other trees there, the other violinists. Everybody knows who's playing what in the percussion section, and they're looking at you because all of a sudden they hear something. Oh, that's a drum. We love the drums. Look at that guy there playing the drum. I hope he doesn't screw up. And actually, one thing that happens with me now is I get more nervous for my colleagues than I do for myself sometimes, which is very strange. And even when I go watch my students play, that's pretty much the only time now that I get nervous. I get nervous for my students as their teacher. I almost want to rescue them sometimes. So those are weird kind of transference things that happen. But as far as performing, it's for me, it's fine. I have complete control. I can pretty much all the time control my performance. Now, a lot of that is preparation. So I'm going into these concerts knowing these pieces upside down, backwards, forwards, always. I know the piece, so I won't get lost. All right. Counting is a big issue. So preparation is one thing that will get you over a lot of these feelings. You've got to be ultra prepared. You know when you're going to come in. Those are problems that are inexcusable. If you can't count, if you come in wrong, You can't do that. There's mental mistakes, which are not allowed. And then there's physical mistakes, which everybody makes physical mistakes once in a while. The greatest players in the world make physical mistakes. But mental mistakes, you need to try to avoid those. And you can avoid those with preparation and music study. So on the drum set, I was always much more relaxed because I grew up as a young kid. I mean, I started playing it when I was, 10 years old. And I was just thought it was fun. I never get nervous, and most 10-year-olds never get nervous because you're not really conscious of yourself yet. Then eventually, maybe when you hit puberty or a little past, all of a sudden you become more conscious of everybody kind of looking at you or judging you, and then you're going to be more critical of yourself as well as other people. And that's when you start getting stage fright or these performance anxiety problems, the awareness. So I don't ever really get nervous when I'm playing drum set because it's kind of like a part of my body. So I remember playing right in back of Ray Charles because he liked the percussion in back of him, and I played with him several times. And I'm playing and I'm like, I'm in back of Ray Charles, and his head's moving around, and he's playing and he's singing, and it's like I'm getting goosebumps, and it's just. But again, I'm in the moment. I'm not thinking of what could happen, and that's exactly what you have to do. You have to really concentrate on what you're doing at that point and don't think about bad things. You can really curse yourself by thinking, oh, I'm going to screw up. You're psyching yourself out. Don't ever go there. And when you practice, you're practicing not psyching yourself out. When you're practicing, you're actually imagining yourself playing the gig. And that's what you're doing. It's very important. And I've read a lot of books because I teach a lot, and I teach a lot of young people who are going to be professional musicians. So I read a lot of books on sports medicine and these kinds of things where they're talking about, almost sports therapy, where these athletes, these elite athletes like tennis players or football players, basketball players, have to go out, especially tennis players. Tennis is fascinating to me because it's just one person, just like boxing, it's one person. And you're going out there and you have to get over these jitters and perform. And so reading these kinds of books and things by the actual players is great, and by the people who treat them with therapy is great. So therapy, I've never had therapy for performance anxiety, but I know people who have, and they say it's helped them quite a bit. So that's another thing that you can look at, and it's called cognitive behavioral therapy. And actually, you can change the way you think about things, which I did on my own, but sometimes you need some help, and that's great. You should do it. And they can give you mechanisms for coping with your stage fright and rethinking how you're approaching a situation. Kind of like a phobia, like if you were afraid of spiders, they'll put you in a room with, they won't, but you could put yourself in a room with spiders or bats or something that you're scared of, or the dark or an airplane or whatever. And then you would actually, over time, pet the spider, I guess, or just get used to it, not be completely terrified by that through that behavior therapy. So that's something that's really legitimate and that you can look into. And like I said, the beta blockers, I've talked to many people who used them, and they say they really, really help with auditions and what they've told me. And I remember when I took it, I was just having trouble breathing during the concert because I was having an asthma attack and I didn't have my albuterol or EpiPen or anything with me, so I was just worried I was going to die. But if you, from what I've heard from folks, is it just basically slows your heart rate down, so you're not, that thumping of the heart. We've all had it when we're scared of something, or we get up in the middle of the night and we hear a noise. Well, I have, where your heart is just, you feel it in your chest, like you can hear it in your ears. It helps suppress that. So that might be something you want to, like I said, talk to your doctor about. So there's one more thing I can talk about before we go, is the actual equipment you use is important. So if you're going to play a really soft snare drum thing, you might want to use a really soft sounding snare drum. So Pearl and some other companies make a little pancake drum that's really quiet. So that's something you can do. The only thing is when you get really loud, it won't be loud enough, so you can switch drums. And at some point in Bolero, another drummer comes in and doubles you. So that can help too. That could be when you can switch. What I like to do a lot of times is use a heavier stick these days. I've talked about this before. It gives you security, and it's actually easy to play soft with a heavy stick. It's harder to play soft for me with a light stick. So I find it much more secure to play with a heavy stick. And actually I made these especially for Bolero. I've had these forever. This is a reverse tip pair of Purple Heart. And these are really heavy. They're over 90 grams, but they're thick, so I can really, relax my hands around them. So that's something you might want to look into. Goes against kind of instinct, right, to play with a heavy stick for something really soft, but for me it works. So I know this doesn't answer all of your questions, but I hope this helps. With my students, sometimes I call this the talk, where I'll talk to them about this. I'll go see them play, and they look like they're about to have a nervous breakdown or run away. Again, I always tell them it's completely normal. It's a normal reaction. I remember, I'll tell you one more thing before we go. I had to do some public speaking many, many years ago. I started doing drum clinics for Vic Firth. And my first one, I was terrified because all of a sudden I'm up there, and for the first time in my life, I got like 300 drummers. It was a PASIC event. Got like 300 drummers out there. And you're thinking in your head, oh, they're going to think I suck and all this stuff. And, the worst possible thoughts go through your head. And I was just terrified. And I had to play congas and drum set and all this. It was like a multifaceted 2-hour clinic. And so when I first started playing, I was just like, how am I going to get through this thing? My legs are shaking and my body's shaking, my heart's beating. But I started breathing and relaxing and just kind of told myself, this is what I do. I can do this. And after about 5 minutes, I completely relaxed. But by the time the first half hour was over, I was just having a great old time. And then after that, I would do tons of clinics and never had an issue with it again. So the cure is actually the experience more than anything. And the more experiences you have, the better it's going to get. The more you'll believe in yourself that you can do it. It's just those first couple big ones. You got to get over them. And you will. So we'll see you next time.